salam, and we're back today for another very interesting and hopefully interesting in-depth discussion about movement and its different composites. And today, Jonce Hamza is going to talk about movement literacy. So I'm sorry, but for me, literacy is associated with books and reading. So let's see how this is going to all pan out today. Hello, assalamu alaikum, Hamza. How are you today?
Walaikum salam. Hi, how's everyone? How are you doing? You okay?
Yes, everybody's fine, which is good. Thank God. Alhamdulillah. And how about you? How has been, how have the last sort of couple of weeks been since I last saw you?
Do you know what? I've been busy basically on helping family. For example, my brother is recently just moved into a new flat. So we've been busy helping him with his movement, etc. And right now I'm kind of like trying to regain my time, you know. So by regaining my time, I'm able to get into looking after myself and doing my training and my exercising, and that's actually take a bit of a hit, really, to be honest. And having my time is really important to do the things that I need to do. So I'm in the mode now of getting myself back into action for myself. Bit selfish, but you know, you've got to be sometimes, you know.
No, that's great. That's great news. That's great news for all of us as well, because I'm sure you have something up your sleeve for us today to make us think as well, because that's what I like about you, is that it's not just about moving your body in all sorts of directions just for the sake of moving. You also really help us understand how it's all connected, how it all works, the mechanics of it. And I find this fascinating because it helps really get into the depth of thing and really understanding and applying it. So take it away, Jonce, Hamza. Explain to us what you mean.
Cool. All right. So what I really wanted to talk about today is something called movement literacy. Now, this idea comes from Gray Cook, who is the founder of functional movement and someone that I look up to. And he talks about the importance of having movement literacy. So as you said in the beginning, when we talk about being literate, we're talking about being able to read. But imagine if you are illiterate, okay? And here, as you know, I live in Oxford. And for us, we have the best university in the world. Okay, there's no argument about that. Okay, and in the Oxford University, we have a library called the Bodleian Library. It's one of the oldest libraries in Europe, and it's the second largest library in this country after the British Library. Okay. Now, the Bodleian consists of a group of libraries, and together they hold over 13 million printed items.
That's quite amazing. That is quite a
so a bit of history now. So, I mean, living in Oxford, you need to know a little bit about your history, right? Now, the Bodleian Library gets its name from Sir Thomas Bodley, and he kind of revived the library, rescued it. And it was open to scholars in 1602. And he did a deal with the Stationers' Company in London in, I think it was 1610. He did a deal with them that every single book that is published in England and is registered in Stationers' Hall, a copy has to be given free to the Bodleian Library. Okay, so it's a pretty good deal. Okay,
that's brilliant. So, yeah.
If you are illiterate and we gave you exposure to that library, it's fair to say that you're not going to benefit from it. Would you agree?
That's very fair to say. Yes, I would be looking at all these amazing books and leather-bound books, etc., and just not being able to. It's pretty much like when you try and read something in a foreign language you don't know. Yeah, would be pretty pointless.
Yeah. So Gray Cook talks about movement literacy in the same way. And he's saying, if you know, and when he talks about literacy, being literate, he means like, do you have the fundamental movement patterns? You know, can you do them? And when we talk about movement patterns, we talk about things like squat, push, pull. And it's saying if you're movement illiterate and you get exposed to movements, in the same way as being exposed to the library, if you're illiterate, you will have problems doing those movements because you don't have those fundamental movement basics.
Right.
Okay.
I see. Yes, that's quite. I understand now the connection. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the movement patterns you can then further break them down to is, do you have joint mobility? Do you have joint mobility? Is your tissue extensibility good? Do you have stability or motor control dysfunctions? These are the things that will get in the way of you being able to have movement literacy. Okay, so I can give you another example from Dr. Andreas Spina, who is the founder of Functional Range Systems, who is another person that I look up to. And Dre, as we like to call him, he talks about something called prerequisites of movements.
Right, so that's another interesting term that with associated with that word. So can you tell us more about that? What that prerequisite means?
Yeah. So prerequisites, when he talks about prerequisites, what he's really referring to is going to the joints. And do you have the degrees of freedom in your joints that enables you to do movements? And when we say degrees of freedom, we're talking about, can your joints move in the way that it's supposed to move? Basically, do you have a joint? And if you're lacking in those prerequisites, then you're going to struggle to do said movement.
So basically, does that mean that is something that we are kind of, does that imply basically that it's something we're born with and we then forget to use or stop using in the right way? Because obviously we all know we have joints and, we know our hips, we know our shoulders kind of things. But so we are basically born with those, but we're not really, we stop using them in the right way, or we never really use them in the right way? Or is it something that we should all kind of learn to use because, I don't know, it's just not, I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I mean, having those fundamental movement patterns is something that it comes natural to us. All right, and it's only as we get older and get on with our life, the quality of our life impacts on those fundamental movement qualities, we say, the prerequisites that we should have in our joints that enables us to do said movement. So the important thing to get on here is not the quantity, like how old you are, but it's the quality of your life. Meaning, what have you been doing with your life that going to impair your movement? Okay, so what we need to do now is to work on making sure that you get those qualities back, those movement prerequisites, the literacy, movement literacy, to enable you to do movement.
Right. Okay. So the thing is, what comes to my mind now when I hear these two words, I kind of have in my mind that prerequisite would be something that you're kind of born with and you use without really thinking. Mm-hmm. So I know in our previous conversations of this recording of screen, you were sometimes taking the example of children, babies, how they just naturally develop their muscles and they have natural range of movements, sort of wide range of movements. They can do things that we quickly can't do anymore.
Yeah.
And then so that would be more kind of the prerequisite, something that is that you use unconsciously, and literacy would be more something that you use using your mind. So is that something that is applied to this with movement as well, that you have to kind of be conscious about some things?
Of course, the mind is always involved. So we never separate the mind from the body. It's all one whole system. We just use the analogy of literacy, just like we use use it for reading. It's just an analogy, really. But what we mean is, like as children, you know, it's natural for us. We're born with all the mobility, you know, with lots of mobility, and from that mobility now we start learning how to control it. And that's why we use the word motor control. It's really, motor control really means to having movement control. Okay, so we learn to be able to control all those degrees of freedoms that we have in our joints to go about our daily business. And when we talk about prerequisites now, I'm coming back to the idea that, well, it's not an idea, you know, the fact that we have the best university in the world. And if you want to get into the best university in the world, and any university actually in any part of the world, you need certain prerequisites to be able to get into there. Okay.
Yes, that makes sense. Yes, absolutely.
That makes sense. That makes sense, right? Okay. So therefore, if you look at it this way, if you want to be able to do said movements, it makes sense to say that you need to have those prerequisites to be able to do those movements.
Yes, absolutely. Now it totally connects.
Yeah. And the important thing here now is, I don't think I've mentioned exercise yet, actually.
No.
I'm talking about movements.
That's true. Yeah. Yes, that's right. It's quite different to what we normally hear.
Yeah, well, movement is something that is described as a change in the position of your body or body part. That is a definition of movement. Okay, so if I'm going to get something, if I'm going to go down from, you know, I'm standing, I'm going to go down to pick up something off the ground. I'm just going to go down, say, for example, to tie my shoelace. I'm just going to do the movement to go down and tie my shoelace. Okay. Exercise, on the other hand, is an activity, you can say movement, that is done for a specific purpose. Okay. And generally we do exercises to improve fitness, for example.
Yeah. Yeah.
So where I just talked about going down to tie my shoelace, all right, if I was in a gym setting, in a gym environment, and I had a barbell with some weighted plates on the end, and I then get down to pick that up and stand up with it, that is now called a deadlift exercise. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And you would hope that when I go to do that deadlift exercise, I am going to have my feet in a certain position. I'm going to grab the bar in a certain position. I'm going to make sure that my hips in a certain position, my back is in the right angle. You know, we can talk about getting the core on and all this kind of stuff, and standing up in such a manner that I don't cause myself injury. Okay. Whereas if I'm going down on the floor to pick up something, there is nothing in my mind that tells me that I've got to put my foot this way or that way. You know, don't pick it up because your foot is not like, your foot is not toed out, for example. You know, there's none of that when we talk about movement. It's just natural. It's just something that we do without, it's not that we don't think about it, but it just happens subconsciously. We just get on with it. Okay. But with the exercise, especially in the beginning, we have to start thinking about, okay, we need to put ourselves in this position, and then after a while it can become more subconscious.
So basically, to sum up, it's basically movement is something we do completely unconsciously, and it's natural, and exercise something where we put a lot more of our mind into, until at least we get it, we're used to doing that exercise in a particular way, and then we get used to it, and then there's muscle memory that plays its part, and we don't have to think in such detailed terms. I think it's a little bit like when you learn to drive a car, isn't it? At the beginning, you've got everything, like how you put your mirror, you look inside, you see, but everything is certain, the pedals. But now when I enter my car, it's just a whole thing. I'm just going to drive. I'm not thinking about the driving. So, but then in that case, then how come then we have injuries by just doing this simple movement, say bending to pick up something, and then we end up with a completely frozen shoulder or a pulled muscle in the back? Or
well, again, whether you're doing an ordinary movement or you're doing a barbell exercise like a deadlift, like we just mentioned, if we come back to that thing about if you're movement illiterate, okay, you don't have those fundamental movement qualities that you're born with. You know, let's just say you're born and you don't have any disabilities and that, and throughout your life, through the quality of how you live your life, you lose some of those qualities. Then when you go to do a movement or an exercise, and exercise is just movements anyway still, okay, so exercise is movements, whereas movements is not, you know, when you go to do a movement, your brain is going to call on your joints to do certain things, okay? So bending down to, you know, to pick up a barbell, you're going to need, your ankle is going to need to be able to dorsiflex. So you're going to need to have a certain range of motion in your ankle. Your knee's going to have to flex. You know, your hips, there's a lot of stuff going on in your hips. There's, you know, it's going to like flex, rotate, internally rotate, etc. When the brain calls on those joints to do said movements, if they don't have it, then you're going to look to other parts of the body to compensate for that. Okay, so again, because I keep harping on, because of the quality of our life and what we do, and a lot of it is because we don't continue doing the things that we used to do when we were younger as children. Okay, and as we're growing up, you know, we lose those things, and we get you hear a lot of like negative stuff about sitting, but you can go further than that. It's not just the problem is that we just sit too much. The problem is that even just the way we sit is causes a problem, where we're not sitting properly. That causes problem. And then from sitting, we're not doing anything to help make up for those deficits that we have. Okay, this is where we come in, like Dre, as we call him, in the functional range systems community. That's why he came up with CARS, and CARS is going to take you through those rotations of your main joints of your body, and it's something you can do very easily to keep it active.
Right. Okay. So that's really good. So basically, you're saying that we can basically avoid getting injured just in doing our just basic daily movements. Ideally, there's another thing that I've noticed in your language is that even when we talk about movement and just simple picking up or doing barbell lift, you talk about the joint moving, but you've not talked about muscles at all.
Yeah, I mean, it all starts from the joints. There is a saying that, and not everyone is got into this saying, yeah, where the joints dictate to the muscles what to do, as opposed, you know, we generally think that the muscles is telling the joints what to do. So everything starts from the joints.
So is that the case of the case of the sun is revolving around the earth, or the earth is revolving around the sun a little bit?
Well, you know, you're into your astronomy, so yeah, you can come up with that as well. Yeah, I mean, the way they talk about it in the way they talk about it, they use the word form follows function. Form follows function. Yeah. So the function of your joints, you know, then the muscles will follow accordingly. So yeah, I mean, muscles is important. You know, we're not like saying muscles is not important, but it's a lot easier to talk about joints because there is less of that. You know, muscles. There's so many muscles. You know, and there is a lot of joints as well, but it's better to talk about like a joint complex. So
I suppose as well, yes, if you need to get better mobility, a better range of movement, generally speaking, I suppose, then yes, if you have good working joints, then the muscles will get stronger. The right muscles will get strong and used at the right time, I suppose, more easily than if you just focus on strengthening a few muscles. Yeah, you're not going to be able to target them all and and you might still cause difficulty with your joints.
Yeah, yeah. And another thing is, I think I hit on it earlier on when I talked about Grey Cock and functional movement. When they talk about these functions, they put it into categories like this. They call it like a joint. You might have a joint mobility dysfunction, so that's relating to the joint, or you might have a tissue extensibility dysfunction, which is relating to the muscles, the tissues. Could be your tendons, your fascia, or whatever. So we're talking about tissues. Okay, so we talk about, does your you have an extensibility problem, dysfunction in terms of like, does it extend? Or we might commonly think of it as like stretch, but use the word does it extend properly? So they do distinguish between a joint and the tissues.
Yeah, I suppose it's like this forklift trucks or anything. If they can have really well-oiled arms or whatever they used to pick up things, but if the cables are slack or they brittle or they're not actually, or they're too tight, that arm will not be. So that's
I like that. So the analogy, that analogy you've just used is a very good analogy. The difference between, like, with a forklift truck, for example. So yeah, I worked with a guy, I remember, who his job was going to play with the cables to get these machines working. He just dealt with the cables, So the cables would represent the tissue. That's what you're saying, isn't it?
That's what I mean.
As opposed to the parts itself, yes.
So you can have like a fantastic joint and completely useless muscles, but I guess it's a bit harder for it to happen that way around, to have fantastic joints and muscles that don't work properly, rather than having good strong muscles maybe in some parts, but actual sort of badly functioning joints. Thinking of the head, for instance.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that they all, you have to have a balance, or everything has to work together. It's all together. So
for instance, give us right. So okay, so now I think we've understood really what literacy and prerequisites are and how important it is. But can you so what can we do then to get more literate? What process should we follow?
I mean, the whole thing I wanted to get across to people is that sometimes, for example, we might say, I haven't been exercising for a while, so I need to get fit, or I want to lose some weight, and we just go out and start running, which is fine, but without knowing whether your joints has the prerequisites needed to do the running. Okay, it's just to make people aware that to maybe check in first. CARS is an easy way that you can check in. You can find certain health professionals around that could help you if you need to have your body checked out. We mentioned in cars, but the actual vehicle itself, every year the car has to have an MOT to make sure that it's functioning properly and it's roadworthy. Okay, so you could think about going in for a body MOT and finding out whether your body is literate, that it can do what you're asking it to do, or whether, looking at the other way, whether it has the prerequisites that it needs to do the movements.
I think it's fantastic. I have to say thank you very much anyway for your dedication to always improve yourself and learn new things. I mean, over the last whatever years we've known each other, I think every few months there's something new you'd like to talk about. So it's really exciting and just so important to constantly try and find better ways of getting our health better. And so that's something that I'm personally very grateful for, and we can do here.
I just want to say what we're doing here also is setting the foundation. So as we continue with our discussions down the line, we will get more into how we go about getting those prerequisites and becoming movement literate. This is just really setting the foundations so that as we continue down the line talking, people will know that where we're coming from and why we will do certain things that we're doing.
Yeah, I think this is oldest as well. I was thinking about these guys, about you, the oldest doctors in FRS.
Functional range systems, FRS.
That they kind of, like Gray Cook and everything, they are the other end of this sort of exercise where they see all these people really wanting to do move. Just generally speaking, most people, we all want to move well and be comfortable in our bodies. And they see all these people going and, as you say, hitting the tarmac and jogging from, like they call it now, couch to 10K or whatever, couch to 5K, whatever. You can just, as if you can really just jump from your couch to jogging, and they think, oh, just go and start running. But they are the sort of other end where they all pick up the pieces, really, for all these people who've just jumped from nothing to the top, and without really thinking, as you said, is my car working properly? Are my joints well oiled? Do they have the ability to do what I'm going to ask them to do all of a sudden after doing not much? Or even for those who have been doing it for a long time and then end up really tearing and wearing out their body from excessive practice without resting. I think that's another theme that I'm going to that we're going to cover in the future, is the importance of rest as well, how to recover. Because we're in this society now, we have to move, we have to be out, we have to be seen to be active. We cannot rest. Rest is like a swear word, especially in the fitness world. So I can understand that from their point of view. Really, it's so much better if they could help everybody to start with a good working machine before doing all this, and that would be so much better. I've learned that through my last 10 years in Taekwondo, how I should have started with that first.
One other thing that we touched on earlier on is we talked about injury and how being movement literate and having the prerequisites will help us with regards to injury and stop injury. What we really say is, it's not so much about stopping injury, it's about mitigating injury, because sometimes, a lot of times you might not be able to, you will get injured. And we're not saying that doing certain things will stop you from getting injured, okay? But we want to minimize the opportunities for you to get injured, okay? And also, if you do get injured, it wouldn't be as severe as if you did nothing, and would help you recover quickly in that. So don't really like to say that, doing all of these things will stop you from getting injured, but we like to more think about mitigating injuries.
Yeah, definitely. This is something I totally relate to personally. When I started Taekwondo 10 years ago, I was getting injured all the time because I was really starting from nothing. But I've noticed over the years now, when I get injured, it's a lot more shorter lived. But also sometimes you realize that I had to basically learn a new technique or progress in a particular technique. Then I had to push myself more. Therefore, I get injured. But there was no real way I could have really foreseen this happening, because you obviously discover your body as you go along. You think you can do certain things. It's okay. You push, and then all of a sudden, the body says, "Hold on a minute, that's too much. Stop now." So that's when we have to be humble and say, "Okay, I'm going to take the rest. I'm going to do the recovery." But I know then as well that I've kind of gone up a notch, and I've had a gain somewhere. Yes, I had an injury, but there was a gain somewhere as well. That's why I reached that point. So it's just to try and kind of navigate that sort of between the two extremes, And so you do doing exercise and moving a lot as well. Moving helps you discover your body as well in that way, by experiencing it. Thank you very much, Jonce, Hamza. That was very insightful, as usual. Always looking forward to it. And hopefully we will see you all in a week or so for another installment of our Function Better video series chats. And we hope to see you next time. Peace and blessing and good health to you all. Thank you very much.